Welcome back to the last task of week 4, that is in decision making. This is a bonus task just to test all the skills that you have learned in this week. So basically what we are trying to do over here is the user is going to enter three sides of a triangle, and you have to display whether that triangle satisfies the criteria for a right angled triangle. Okay, now to make a right angled triangle, everybody knows that it should satisfy the Pythagoras theorem, right? So Pythagoras theorem says that hypotenuse square must be equal to the square of the addition of the side square of the side other two sides, right? So our task should be to find the hypotenuse first, and everybody knows the hypotenuse is the greatest side amongst the three, right? So basically we have to use the previous knowledge we have used in the last week, the how to find the greatest number. So by using that technique we will be finding out the greatest the largest number, and we will say that that is the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse square should be equal to the square of the other two sides, sum of the square of the other two sides, right? So let us begin. And one more thing, we would also have to check whether the user has entered positive numbers or not. Okay, so that should also be one of the criteria to test. Okay, so let's go ahead and first get the declare the variables. So to declare the variables, let us say that we are going to deal only in integer numbers. Then integer, let's take three sides, a, b and c. Okay, and let's take another one. It's let it be, let's say, hypotenuse, hypt, then side 1 and side 2. Okay, so abc is going to store the numbers entered by the user, so the user can enter it in any form they want. What we are going to do is we are going to separate it into three numbers. The first one is the greatest number, which is the hypotenuse, and the remaining two will be saving it in side 1 and side 2. Okay, so let us first print out what this program is going to do. So let us say triangle checker. Okay, /n/n. Then let us take the input from the user. So using scanf I can take the input. So %d comma, I will use comma separated values as usual, and I will store the first %d in a, second in b and third in c, and don't forget to add the ampersand sign in front of all the variables. Always remember scanf requires ampersand sign. Okay, and now to tell the user what they have to do, I will just use a printf to let them know. So enter the sides a comma b comma c. Okay, and this will run and get the input sides. Okay, now the first thing to check is whether the user has entered correct sizes or not, right? So for that I will just check whether it is greater than 0 or not, right? So if I have a if statement over here, and I will just check if a is greater than 0 and B is greater than 0, and C is greater than 0. Okay, so all the three values should have some value in it, right? It should not be 0 or less than 0. You cannot have negative numbers, right? So if it is true, right, if wait a minute, I will just change this to less than or equal to 0, or less than or equal to 0, and less than or equal to 0. Okay, so if it is true, that means it is less than equal to 0, then that means these sides are invalid. So I would just printf and invalid sides, right? And then after that the program should not run, program should quit. Okay, so whenever I want the program to quit, I should simply return 0, and whenever it encounters return 0, it will not go ahead from here, it will just simply stop the program from going ahead, right? So that is what we want, because once the user enters invalid numbers, there is no point going ahead. Okay, so now once we are sure that the numbers are valid, now next task will be to find out which out of the three numbers is the hypotenuse, and which are the sides, right? Now to find that, I will simply do an if statement, right? And if I will just simply write a, if a is greater than b, and if a is greater than c. If a is greater than b and if a is greater than c, that simply means a is the hypotenuse. So h y pt is equal to a, right? And s1 is equal to b, and s2 is equal to c, right? So I have found out which of them is the hypotenuse if a is greater, right? Similarly, I will do it for other condition, that is if b is greater than c and b is greater than a, right? If b is greater than c and b is greater than a, that means b is the largest. So I will just replace this by b and this by a, right? So b is the hypotenuse and s1 and s2 are the other two sides, right? And if none of them satisfy, that means c is the largest, right? So the same thing I'm going to take, and this time c is the hypotenuse and a is s1 and b is s2. Okay, so after this if condition runs, we understand that we have now the hypotenuse, we have these other two sides, right? Now the only thing remaining is to use the Pythagoras theorem and check, right? So hypotenuse into hypotenuse, is it equal to s1 into s1 plus s2 into s2. Okay, so if multiplication of this is equal to addition of these two numbers, then that means it satisfies the Pythagoras theorem, right? Now once it satisfies the Pythagoras theorem, I can simply say printf it's a right angled triangle, and else if it doesn't satisfy, then I can say it is not, it's not a right angled triangle. Okay, so I think this is it. Let's just try to run it and see if there is any error. So it asks for triangle sides. I know the sides of right angle triangle 3, 4 and 5. If I enter, it says it's a right angle triangle. Let me take some other values. Let's say 1, 7 and 9. It's not a right angle triangle. And let me run it one more time. Let's say 1, minus 1, 4 and 6. You can say you can see it's saying it's not a right angle triangle. Okay, I think there is some mistake. Let me come back over here. So this if condition is not working, let us debug what's going on. So according to this, if a is less than, okay, so this should have been or. Okay, so that was a mistake from my side. So if any one of them is incorrect, so it should stop, right? So that was a problem from my side. Okay, so again, if I put minus 1, 4 and 5, you can see invalid sides. Perfect. Okay, so I hope you have understood this program and how we can use it to find solve different real world problems. This finishes with the week 4 on decision making. See you in the next week with new tasks.